Nobuyoshi, Drakengard. In a faraway eastern land, there was a poet who made a living reciting songs, but he nearly felt the limits of his own skills, and so he made a pact with the ghost. With the power of the ghost inside him, he began to compose glorious and beautiful songs. His fame spread throughout the city, and before long, he was named the official poet to the imperial court. But one day, the ghost returned to him, and she said thus, "Your life as a genius poet is over. You shall henceforth never sing a song again." It was as the ghost said. The poet fell silent, and no more songs came from his lips. His dream gone, he plunged this sword into his breast. It still gleams with the glistering of his blood. Nobuyoshi, Drakengard 2. In an eastern land, a poet who made his living singing songs grew wary of his trade when he realized he'd reached his limits of his talents. While contemplating what else he might do with his life, he saw a beautiful sword in the window of a pawn shop. Enchanted by its crimson blade, he bought the sword and took it home. That night he slept with the sword by his side. As he began to dream, an imp appeared and demanded a trade. He said that if the poet gave up his name, the imp would give him talent in return. The poet gave his name to the imp without a second thought. In return, he received a beautiful body and an exquisite talent for songs overnight. But without a name, the beautiful poet lost more and more of his humanity as the days went by. One fateful morning, he'd awoken to find that he'd been turned into an imp. Fearing to be seen in a world of men, he fled and was never seen again. He left behind the beautiful sword, now granted a name. Fun fact, the weapon is actually named after the original composer to Drakengard, Nobuyoshi Sano, so that's its name. Faith, NieR Replicant. There was once a famous poet in a land to the far, far east. Now, in his twilight years, his ability had withered such that he could no longer craft a single stanza or verse. The poor poet spent every moment racked with sorrow for what had been lost. But one day, a monk appeared by his side, gently placed a blade in his hand, and imparted the following words: "Kill one by this blade for one poem, and two for two in kind, the likes of which will be more splendid than any this world had ever heard." Clinging to the monk's words, the man waited for the cover of darkness and cut down a man he encountered by the roadside. The following day, he wrote a most beautiful poem, instantly reclaiming the fame and prosperity he had lost. The poet went on to kill two in succession. He killed one and wrote a poem, then killed again and wrote another, rising to almost dazzling levels of wealth and renown. But soon, he became obsessed with knowing how splendid a poem he might write if he were to kill someone precious to him. He killed his wife and wrote a poem. He killed his children and wrote a poem for each. He moved through his estate, killing everyone there, writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. Eventually, he killed so many passers-by that the poems could not keep up. He would kill and write, then kill and kill and kill and kill, until in the end, he took his own life. No longer crafting poems at all. All that remained was the blade wet with blood. Ravenfeeder, Drakengard. A circular bladed sword owned by a noble family that lived deep within a great forest. It was said that the user of this weapon would be blessed by the gods with 3 lives. The sword was originally designed as a tool for torture. Its outer blade is sharp enough to bisect a man with one stroke, while the inner is kept dull to inflict hideous pain. Poison can be poured into the handle. As soon as the victim is cut, the poison flows into the wound and causes nearly instantaneous death. So cruel was this weapon judged to be, it was banned by the old kings. Soon thereafter, it became infamous as the tool of assassins. Rebirth, NieR Replicant. That's right. This here's the weapon that'll be ending your life. Oh, don't sweat it. There's nothing to worry about. It'll be a pain the likes of which you've never felt before. In fact, you won't even feel pain at first. It'll be more like water sliding across your skin. Honestly, for most folks, it ain't the pain that makes them scream, it's the sight of their own blood flowing out of them. Yeah, it won't end so easy. See this part of the blade right here? This part hurts like a real son of a bitch. It's my favorite, which is why I always save it for last. I like to use it after people's voices get too hoarse and you can't tell what they're saying, which is a real fucking hell. Are you ever loud? Mind piping down there? You're gonna make my hand slip. I wouldn't kill you right away, so don't worry about a thing there, champ. I'm gonna take my sweet time before you finally give up the ghost. Honestly, you'd be surprised how much it takes to kill a person. I mean, think about it. People got 2 eyes, most of them anyway, and 2 ears, 10 fingers, 10 toes, 20 nails across the lot. And don't even get me started on joints, cause folks got hundreds of the damn things. Yeah, we've got plenty of ways to keep ourselves entertained. Huh? Why am I doing this? Now ain't that a question? Buddy, I'm just doing what you've been doing for a good long while now. Nabbing innocent citizens on fake charges, torturing them, and putting their severed heads on display. That ring any bells, buddy? It should, cause it was all you. Guess maybe you forgot all about that, eh? Well, that's okay. I'll spend all the time it takes to make sure you remember every last thing you did to my wife and daughter. Maiden's Kris, Drakengard. When the shrine was built, young women were chosen to be sacrifices. They plunged this Kris sword into their own hearts. The blade glimmers with the souls of its young victims. The first sacrifice was a respected and pious believer. The pure woman was chosen to serve as the foundation stone of the new shrine. The second sacrifice was a kind girl of the village. Though sad to be chosen for death, she consoled herself with the knowledge that her sacrifice would help others. The third sacrifice was a girl who made her living as a thief. She cursed the gods angrily as her life was taken. At the moment the sword struck home, it coiled and writhed like a wounded snake. Maiden's Kris, Drakengard 2. A short sword lay at the corner of the altar in the shrine. During its construction, the sword was used to take the lives of sacrificial maidens, whose blood was offered to earn the blessings of the gods. The number of maidens sacrificed is the number of the pillars. Each of the maidens, who died against their will, cursed the sword with their last breath. Soon after the shrine's completion, the priestesses fell victim to disease and misfortune. One by one, their order dwindled and the shrine was eventually abandoned in the wake of the war. Several hundred years later, the shrine still stood. Resting on its forgotten altar, the cursed sword remained, casting an eerie light around the murdered maiden's tomb. Nirvana Dagger, NieR Replicant. The girl had been betrothed to the local lord on the day of her birth. As she grew, her days were taken up studying proper bridal technique. As she grew, Her days were taken up studying proper bridal technique, while her evenings were spent staring at her bedroom window and offering prayers for her betrothed to the night sky. "Oh my lord, if only you were to come to me but a single day sooner." Her home was occupied by several other girls her age. Each one shared the same betrothed, and spent her days studying bridal techniques and her evenings praying to the night sky. "Oh my lord, if only you could come to me but a single day sooner." One day, a quarrel broke out as the girls argued that only the greatest among them could become their lord's betrothed. None would yield an inch, each asserting only they alone could possibly satisfy him. Seeing this, their caretaker said in a kind voice, "Worry not, girls. Each and every one of you shall surely become bride to our lord." Hearing this, every face lit up with an expression of pure joy. On the day they were to be married, the girls were brought to the place of cobbled stone they could see from the windows of their home. A single dagger was then placed before them, and the girls were told they needed to end their life here and now if they wished to meet their betrothed. Upon hearing this news, the girls scrambled to seize the dagger from one another, plunging it into their chests the moment they held it. Years later, a temple named the Betrothed was built on the spot where the girls took their own lives. Moonfire, Drakengard. This sword was forged of a granite that burns red with eternal heat. Only those who enjoy the protection of the moon god, ruler of the cool night, may dare grasp the handle. Legend tells of a great warrior who carried this sword into battle. Roaring a battle cry, he charged into the fray, where 100 enemy archers struck him through with 1,000 arrows. Yet not a drop of blood flowed from his wounds, and though arrows pierced his heart, his strength failed him not. His army was the victor on that day. With the battle won, the warrior returned to camp, but in the instant he laid down his sword, he froze as cold and as still as ice. The protection of the moon god had finally claimed his life. Moonfire, Drakengard 2. The sword made of marble emits a fierce chill and quietly awaits its owner. The legend told that the marble sword could freeze even its owner's age. It continues to wait patiently. The marble sword continued to wait. So long it waited, long enough to freeze time. The sword had waited for so long that surely even the warmth of human blood could not awaken it now. The only thing that could be said for sure is that the frozen face of its wielder would be reflected in its blade. Moonfire, Drakengard 3. The marble sword was imbued with the blacksmith's blazing soul. It yearned for an owner who thirsted for blood, who pined for battle, who hungered for war. But its razor edge emitted smearing heat, enough to reduce to ash any stalwart warrior who wielded it. The sword waited for a strong soul to tame its boiling heart. It waited for the warrior who would let blood spill across its blade. Even as it took the lives of those who saw it, the sword waited. It waited for a vessel for its soul, and eternity spread before it like an icy embrace. Moonrise, NieR Replicant. There is a legend of long ago that speaks of a nation threatened by a great inferno. This nation, however, was saved from eternal hellfire by a sword with the power to freeze anything. Around this sword stood thousands upon thousands of ice sculptures. A man on a journey to seek out weapons eventually discovered the sword. He wrapped it in several layers of cloth and took it with him, placing it in the bag he carried upon his back. But before the man realized what was happening, the cloth, the sword, and his own body ended up frozen solid. A traveling shrine maiden eventually discovered the sword. She offered a prayer to her god and gripped the hilt, but cold instantly shot through her fingers and into her body, freezing her solid. In her final moments, the shrine maiden unleashed words of great blasphemy to the god who had failed her. An enslaved woman in a mine eventually discovered the sword. Desiring an easy death over the continuation of her daily suffering, she grasped the weapon firmly, and while the woman did not freeze, she was also unable to pierce her own flesh. Soon, moonlight shone upon the blade of the weapon, reflecting the sight of the woman being beaten and dragged away by her master. Demon's Cry, NieR Automata. Once there was a gentle angel who came to Earth to provide salvation for those in need. Whether it was curing illnesses, offering blessings, or cheering the sad, he was always there when needed. The angel, however, provided aid to sinners and non-believers as well, an act which was strictly forbidden. Each time he did so, a single white feather would fall away from his glorious wings. One day, the angel came across a young girl with an illness that pained her deeply, but he could not do anything to help the child, for all his feathers had long since fallen off. The angel cursed both himself and the cruelty of the world. The resulting hatred stained his body and his wings, turning them both black as night. Then, crying tears of blood, he brought his hands to the girl's neck. Demon's Cry, NieR Reincarnation. This is a story from when I was a child. There was once a terrifying demon with black wings who landed in our village and committed such atrocities that all were struck dumb with fear. We had no choice but to flee our home, but when we turned around for a final look, we saw people had appeared who were attempting to fight the demon. The valiant group finally bound the demon and ended its life. Relieved the threat was over, we decided to return to our village. Several days later, our village was struck by a natural disaster, killing many. Some claimed it was the demon's revenge, but I think the demon was trying to save us in the first place. Mourning Thorn, Drakengard 2. I'm so hungry. The hobgoblin decided to help his boss as he always did. Usually he had to get food by helping out with various odd jobs, but today he would get a meal without having to do anything at all. An attack on a human village was planned for the following evening, and a hearty meal was provided in a preparation. So they charged into battle, expecting a swift victory, but the humans repelled their attack with a great determination, and the fight raged on. In the midst of the carnage, the hobgoblin fell into a shallow well. There he found a magnificent scythe. It was the failed creation of a demented magician. The scythe was designed to increase its wielder's desire to win. In reality, however, it brought out other uncontrollable desires in its wielder. Deemed useless, it had been thrown into the well. The hobgoblin climbed out of the well with the scythe in his hands. Hungry for food and blood, he began to kill humans left and right. But the scythe's power soon began to overwhelm the hobgoblin. When all the humans were dead, he began to bite and maim the other goblins. Even murdering and eating the entirety of his own tribe failed to satiate his appetite. And finally, he slit his own throat with the scythe. It was later found by a beautiful elf. Mourning Thorn, Drakengard 3. Why did I lose my child? Why did my child have to die? Why must I bear this punishment? All the other children survived. Why did mine perish? Theirs should have died too. Every last one of them. No, I mustn't think this way. They are all precious. We must protect my lost child, and all the others too. But this world is chaos and strife. How can we hope to safeguard the children? The precious, precious children. To protect them, I must join them. But there are so many. Wait, I know. I must chew them up. Chew them all. Open my mouth and chew all the pretty babies. Crimson Shortsword, NieR Reincarnation. In a far-off nation, a blacksmith tended his forge. He had a friendly competition with a fellow smith, and the two of them honed their craft against each other, strengthening themselves as iron does iron. But soon, the gap in their skills began to widen, and people stopped coming to his forge. The more the first smith tried to improve, the more he fell behind his fellow, and with each passing year, he began to disappear his lack of skill all the more. "You did this," he whispered one night. You. The sword was forged in jealousy, by the very blaze that burned his old friend, and it harbored the flames of envy. Crimson Greatsword, NieR Reincarnation. Once there was a village that suffered from a dragon. Stalwart men attempted to drive the beast hence, but its flames reduced all who came near to ash. The village was on the edge of destruction when the people heard rumors of a man who wielded a mighty greatsword. His weapon was said to hold a power of flame and had been used to slay countless fiends. The villagers tracked down the swordsman and begged him for succor, for they hoped his sword could stand against the dragon's flame, and though they knew it was a heavy request, the man quickly and confidently agreed. As they hoped, the greatsword resisted the dragon's flame, but the swordsman, alas, did not, instead turning into ashes on the wind and vanished without a trace. Crimson Spear, NieR Reincarnation. Once there was a soldier who lived through hundreds of battles and was known as a legend. The reason for this name was his brawny frame, clean spearsmanship, and the strange weapon he carried that housed the power of flame. The spear's awesome power could burn away bullets and arrows in flight. One day, he and his army burned another village to the ground. His fellows were thrilled about the mission, for they knew they would not lose with him there. One night at a banquet, his squad mates asked for the secrets to his survival. "No matter how powerful your weapon," said the man proudly, "it means nothing if you do not have the skill to wield it. What's important is to train every day." Soon thereafter, his entire army was wiped out by a plague from a village that they burned down. The common folk, who heard of the events, turned them into the following lesson: what's important is a healthy body so you avoid illness. Crimson Gauntlet, NieR Reincarnation. The man beat people, seeking to change his life of violence. He took what little money he had, purchasing a pair of hand protectors, and became a combatant in an underground fighting ring. The man continued to beat people. He defeated all comers with his signature move, a single punch from his white-hot right fist. Soon, he had won so many fights that he found himself a wealthy man. The man stopped beating people. In addition to his newfound wealth, he now had a beloved wife and daughter, so he began thinking of a way he could keep his family happy that did not involve violence. The man began beating people again. He became a torturer, and now pummels with a smile. "I'll beat them until they confess," he is heard to say, but this is not violence. This is justice. Crimson Pistol, NieR Reincarnation. One day, 3 brothers in the same army were sent to fight a battle against terrible odds. Sometime later, The youngest returned and told their commander a tale. On the way to battle, the brothers encountered a merchant. He felt pity for Trio and offered each of them a pistol. The cautious elder brother chose one with an attached scope, while the brawny middle brother took a large caliber weapon. Unable to speak for himself, the timid younger brother was left with a completely unremarkable pistol. With their new weapons in hand, they made their way to the battle. It turns out that the plain pistol was in fact a magical weapon that never ran out of ammunition, which is how the youngest brother ended up being the only survivor. Crimson Staff, NieR Reincarnation. A lone boy stood sobbing before a gate. He had hoped to attend the land's most prestigious school of magic, but they rejected him because he was too poor and lacked the proper arcane equipment. But the boy would not give up on his dream. Since he could not purchase equipment, he snuck onto the school grounds and found a dirty staff discarded in the trash. Several years later, he graduated from the school at the top of his class and was rewarded with a beautiful new staff. He immediately tossed his old one aside and began to walk the path of a sorcerer in both name and deed. Sadly, however, once he discarded the old staff, he lost his ability to perform magic, and after several fruitless years, the once promising sorcerer took his own life. Antinomy Pistol, NieR Reincarnation. A mother works herself to the bone for a son who lies unconscious in the hospital. The cost means nothing compared to his life, yet the fear he may never wake gnaws at the corner of her mind. One day, a man who claims to be a scientist approaches the mother and says he can cure her son where the hospital cannot. Though she does not know his motives, she agrees out of desperation. Later, a photograph of a tearful mother hugging her son appears in the newspaper. He had been freed from a terrible disease, and the article praises a certain scientist for his feat. Years later, in an empty city, a lone television reports on a war started when a scientist created a chemical weapon. The screen shows the corpse of a mother embracing her dead child. Antinomy Spear, NieR Reincarnation. A boy and a girl struggle to survive in a polluted land. The foul air ruins everything: people, trees, grass, all of it. Children born there fall sick and die without ever having a chance to create a future. When the girl realizes she is ill, she tells the boy her dream. She had once seen a white flower in a picture book and wants to behold it for real before she died. The boy has never seen a flower, but searches desperately all the same. He crosses blockades, fords streams, and enters forbidden lands. Finally, he finds a flower that is brown, withered, and ugly. Hesitantly, he offered the flower to the girl, who closes her eyes and strokes the petals with one shaking hand. "It's beautiful," she says as a tear rolls down her face. She then slips into oblivion, still clutching the flower. Antinomy Fists, NieR Reincarnation. My research led to uncountable people dying in battle. This troubled me at first, but I eventually stopped thinking about it. Then they brought me a new test subject, a middle-aged man, fat as a pig. My orders were to find a way to make his body produce a mysterious toxin, but the man was confusing. He didn't seem to have a human ego, and when he spoke, he only grunted and begged for food like an animal. I observed the man as I experimented on him, and over time, my contact with him reawakened the humanity I had long ago. This led me to wonder what would happen to the man when the experiment was over. At that moment, I remembered why I became a researcher, and it wasn't to kill people, so I canceled the experiment. People were furious and I had to flee. But I feel much better because... Oh wait, it's feeding time. Antinomy sword. NieR Reincarnation. Why did this happen to me? I'm just a damn engineer. This war took everything. My wife. My pregnant wife. I don't even know if she's alive. All I have now is revenge, which is why I devoted myself to weapon development. My goal was to create living weapons. Weapons that thought, learned, evolved. I would use them to inflict pain on the people who took everything from me. But first I needed actual people to serve as my materials. I found children who had lost everything and altered them. One by one, they were reborn as weapons. They too have surely lost things precious to them. And I know that together, we will turn our hate into power. But when the work was done, I found a necklace that belonged to my wife. A groan escaped my lips as I saw it, but my weapons made no response. Once I collected myself, I ordered one of them to kill me. Antinomy staff. NieR Reincarnation. I don't know color, for I've always been blindfolded. I don't know song, for I've no one to speak with. I don't know rain, for I've never been outside, but such things brings me comfort. I don't know light, for I've killed many people. I don't know the sea, for I was born as a tool. I don't know love, for my life has no value. But how am I supposed to die? I don't know night, for I've always had bright dreams. I don't know lies, for I cover my ears in terror. I don't know pain, for I have always been protected. But I need to find my end quickly. I don't know God, for no one has given me one. I don't know sin, for my blood is sullied. I don't know life, for everyone is dead. But I'm glad you listened to me.